Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the Get Lit podcast, the show where we leverage the 4F bombs of faith, family, fitness, and finance, and share real stories that help you level up in every area of your life. I'm your host, Mike Hough. Usually I'm joined by my friend and co-host Shane Beckham, but he's out this week, so flying solo today. But don't worry, we're going to go somewhere wild, literally. Earlier this year, I had the chance to visit Katmai National Park in Alaska. You heard me talking about this on a couple of the last episodes. It's the home of the famous Brooks Falls, where coastal brown bears gather every summer to feast on salmon. And it's the most amazing sight you've ever seen. I mean, you're literally standing 10 feet away from these gigantic beasts that we're all taught to be very afraid of for good reason. But they're so fat, dumb, and happy to barely notice you're standing there. And as I watch these massive, majestic animals do their thing, I started jotting down ideas of leadership. It's amazing to me where you can find corollaries in the real world. So in today's episode, we're going to dive into 6 powerful leadership insights inspired by the brown bears of Katmai. I promise by the end of this episode, you'll never look at leadership or wildlife the same way again. So let's get into it. Okay, so lesson number 1, respecting territories and boundaries. You know, it's crazy. There are so many bears in this river, and they are standing at the top of the falls. They're all throughout the river. And the young submissive bears, they tend to fish downriver a little bit, where the fish are easier to catch. Well, they're not easier to catch, frankly, but there's less crowding. They're actually having to fish. They're having to pounce on fish that are in the river. Much harder to do than what the big bears do. And the big bears are standing either at the base of the falls or even at the top of the falls. And as the fish are jumping up the falls, they're catching them in their mouths. But there's no fighting. There's no disruption amongst these bears. Every now and again, there's a minor squabble. But it's because everyone respects what everyone else's position is on that leadership chain. And I think the leadership takeaway in that, as you observe these bears doing amazing things, doing these bear things, I like to say, is 1, you can set clear boundaries to reduce unnecessary friction. If everyone knows their role and their position in the river, then everyone can understand where their boundaries are and where they end. 1, there has to be a recognition of hierarchy, formal or informal, to create stability. And that's what's going on here with these bears. They understand each of their roles and where they are in the pecking order. Not that there has to be this submissive as there are with the bears situation, but there does have to be the idea that there are people who make decisions and there are people who execute those decisions, and that's just how it works. Otherwise, there's chaos. And great leaders, those big bears at the beginning, they don't have to necessarily constantly assert power. They are not standing at the top of the falls, beating up young bears to make sure that they understand their role. Their presence alone, these big, massive animals, sets the tone. And so, when you think about this for your own team, one way to take this lesson, respecting territories and boundaries, back home is to say, where are the boundaries unclear on my team? Where do I see things where things are a little gray, where there isn't clear solution? And interestingly enough, Shane in our last session talked about this in his gym. One of the things that created a rift between two of his team members was the boundaries weren't clear. The expectation wasn't clear into who was supposed to be doing what. So think about that as you're thinking about these bears and about how it applies to you and your business. The second lesson is about patience and timing. Now, these big bears that are topped at the perch of the falls, yes, surely in the early summer, there's a ton of fish coming over those falls and they're catching them left and right. And I mean, these guys are eating 50,000 calories a day. Each fish, I think, is like 4,500 calories or something like that. It's amazing to watch them just tear into those salmon, not for the faint of heart, but it is something to see. But later on in the season, there's fewer salmon going upstream. And so what happens is they have to be patient. We watched this one bear stand at the top of the falls for, half an hour, 45 minutes, and not a single fish caught, but that bear never moved. And there were fish jumping. I would say there was 2 or 3 a minute, but not a single fish caught. So they are up there patiently waiting for the perfect salmon to leap at the perfect salmon time, at the perfect salmon moment, so that they can catch it and eat that fish. So the most successful of those bears, not the ones that are the strongest, they're the ones that are the most patient and the most strategic about where they think that next fish is going to come from and where they should position themselves in the falls. So the leadership takeaway here is that timing and preparation often beats speed and force. So you could be the biggest bear, but if you're not thinking about where that next fish is going to jump and you don't have the right timing when it jumps, you're going to miss that opportunity. So it's not about speed and force. It's really timing and preparation to make sure when the opportunity comes, you're ready. The second takeaway is resist that urge to push every decision or chase every opportunity. You can't chase every fish because then you'll miss the one where you should have been strategically placed to catch it. And you can't rush the decision to try to catch everything that's coming your way, or you'll miss the ones that truly do. And the third component of that is strategic patience always leads to bigger results with less wasted energy. If you are patient and you build the right mousetrap to catch what you're trying to go achieve, or the right bear position, with whatever it might be, you're not going to waste a ton of energy bouncing around from idea to idea and thought to thought to try to find the ultimate solution. So think about this with your team. Where would waiting for the right moment lead to better outcomes for you and your team? And the third lesson is about being adaptable in your methods. It's amazing to see the number of methods. We learned about this. So the first thing you do when you fly into Katmai is you go right to bear school. And that's for a lot of reasons. One, they want you to learn about the styles and temperament of bears. Two, they want you to learn about how to stay safe and how to not do silly things that, a lot of us tourists do. And then three is to learn about their nature and what kinds of things do they do. And they've all got different fishing strategies. And you can see it when you're observing them. Some, as I said, stand at the falls and catch the fish. Some, they wade downstream and they scavenge. And so they're just looking for, there are thousands, tens of thousands of salmon, even late fall, like we were there, well, late summer, I guess it was, early September, just salmon just at still in the river. But if a bear that tries to catch that salmon still has to pounce on it, and that fish knows that bear is coming and they move. So they're not always successful. Some of the most successful bears would wait for a fish to move into their territory and then pounce on them. But so that's one way. And the third they call snorkeling, where a bear is physically putting his head underwater for long periods of time and moving down the river and looking for fish and then making a quick leap to try to catch that fish. So it's really crazy to watch all three of those adaptabilities, and they use different methods for the most gain during different periods of the season. So, and they do it based on their size and their skill and their situation. So, if they're a smaller bear, they're going to have to snorkel. If they're a little bit bigger bear, they can probably pounce. If they're a big bear, they can hold their position at the top of the falls, and they can just sit there and wait and be patient. So bears have to adapt based on size, skill, and situation at all times. So what's the leadership takeaway? There is no single right leadership style. These brown bears, they know their strengths, their resources, and their environment, and they adapt to it. They do the thing that makes the most sense for that part of their environment. So the leadership lesson is you need to adjust your conditions. You need to adjust your approach when conditions change. So, we've all been in that situation a million times where you're trying to achieve a goal, it's not generating the right outcome, and you just are so focused on the end game that you don't think about, am I clinging to a method here that doesn't fit the situation any longer? And so that's a good lesson for all of us to consider anytime that we're in a situation where we're not getting the outcomes that we're expecting. Should we change our method so that we can gain a new engagement? This is also great in terms of managing team members, right? Not all team members respond to the same leadership style. So figuring out that situation and what fishing method you should use for that scenario is a great way to ensure positive energy and forward momentum. The fourth is energy management. So as you're watching these bears, these guys, they are not fighting with each other. They are not moving unless they have to. Understand that what they're trying to do is gain as much body weight, as much mass as possible so that they can go into that hibernation with whatever they need to survive it and get to the other side and still be strong when they emerge in the spring. So they prioritize high calorie intake for winter survival. That's their mission. It's all they're worried about. One of the reasons why they're not worried about humans is one, they're fat and it'd be difficult to find them. Two, they've got all the food they need. So they're not looking for food. Then three, they're used to it. It's a place where humans go watch them all the time, but they are far from domesticated. But what they do is they avoid unnecessary fights and wasted motion. They're not fighting with each other. They're not chasing each other up and down stream. They're not jumping on fish that are low likelihood of catching. The ones standing on the falls are not chasing every fish. They're chasing the ones that come through their route. And so the leadership takeaway here is that energy, it's a finite resource. You got to use it wisely. You don't have time to do all the things you want to do. So what are the most important things that are going to move the needle fastest? And that's where you should focus. Also remember, your team's energy is not a finite resource. You may have all these grand ideas and you think they can do them all, and they probably can in silos. But when everything is being required at all times, they're just going to burn out. So you really want to focus on high impact activities, just like these bears do. And you really want to learn to rest and when to engage. There are times where you need to go all out. There's times where you need to take the pedal off the gas a little bit. And then again, do not waste energy on low return battles. There's just stuff out there that just doesn't matter. You have to be as a leader, you have to be the one to recognize that, and you have to be the one to pull the reins on something that just doesn't make a lot of sense to spend energy on. So the question here is, where are you spending energy that isn't moving the mission forward? Where is your team spending energy on things that aren't as important as other things they should be spending energy on? And this isn't about right or wrong. This is just about, look, if our objective today is X, then let's put all the oars in the water against X. Our objective today is Y, shift course and go to Y. Don't have some people still doing X if really Y is the outcome you're searching for. Fifth principle that I really loved is teaching through example. Had a chance to see a mom and her cub, second year cub, and then we saw another mom and two cubs. Didn't get to see them fish, but a mom and her second year cub. And even the second year cub is playing. Here's what's interesting about bears is that these brown bears, the cubs stay with their mom until their second or third year, and during that time, the mom is loving and engaging. And when it's time for those bears to leave the nest, they become aggressive and they show that cub that they're no longer welcome. And it's a really amazing sight to see. We didn't get a chance to see that, but we did see a second year cub who was learning to fish through their mom. And now they'd already been through a full season, so they kind of understood it. But the cub still wanted to play a little bit more than mom wanted the bear to fish. And so she would constantly re-engage that cub and try to push him back into the river. But what was amazing is all mom does is demonstrate. So she's not yelling at the bear. She's not, telling the bear a 4-hour lecture. She is simply modeling the behavior, and that's their teaching method. So leadership takeaway is that, most leaders today do a lot of teaching through dialogue. Not wrong. And some people are auditory learners only. So that's the right thing to do, is to engage with everyone through dialogue. But the most impactful way is through consistency and behavior. So whatever behaviors you emulate, whatever behaviors you reward, and whatever you model is the behavior that your team will follow. So as an example, in my industry, if I'm a ramp supervisor, if I'm not out setting the standard in terms of wearing my hearing protection, wearing my vest, always putting my seatbelt on when operating a vehicle, and doing all the things that would seem boring to many of you to hear about, then I can't expect my team to do it. I certainly can't coach them verbally if they don't do the things I expect them to do when I'm not doing it myself. That applies to all of us as leaders. That applies to us in every discipline. If you're expecting your team to be there 3 days a week, 8 hours a day, if you've got a flexible work schedule, then you better be there 3 days a week, 8 hours a day, if not 4 or 5, to demonstrate that this is what leadership is. If you are expecting your team to bust through your finance team and you're closing the month and you're expecting them to bust through and get closing done within 3 days, but you're not there past 5 p.m. when they're all there till 8 or 9, it's just not going to be the behavior that you expect when you don't model what it is that you're looking for. The sixth and last idea was that I'm watching these bears, and it's this idea of coexistence without dominance. So as I mentioned before, these bears come in different shapes and sizes now. They're all big. I mean, big. You wouldn't want to see any one of these bears on a trail when you're out in the woods by yourself. And I'm talking 800 to 1,500 pound kind of bears. But some are 1,500, some are 800, 400 if they're young. Bears coexist peacefully most of the time despite their strength. I mean, these are massive animals that could tear each other up. There's an occasional scuffle from time to time. Really, that's just about, hey, you're not respecting my boundary. That's clear, and that happens pretty rarely. The bear will start to move in another bear's territory, and they might either stand up or palm or whatever. But it's not a complete scuffle. But most of the time, they're resource sharing. All these fish are for all of them. They all understand that for us to all survive, we just need to find our own position and share resources and not have battles. And so the leadership takeaway I got there was that leadership does not equal dominance. Being a leader, and inexperienced leaders do this all the time, you often think to be the boss, you got to be the one who is completely dominating the conversation, the outcomes, the ideas, the level of volume in the room. It just isn't. Cooperation is way better than dominance to generate cohesion amongst the team. Conflict is not going to get sustainable success. There's a need for productive conflict, and then that comes whether it's with leaders or with peers. But broadly, your mission is not to be dominant. Your mission is to be supportive, to be engaging, to understand that everyone's got their role. So the idea is not to push people to their outcomes. The idea is to want people to generate their own path to their outcomes. Strong leaders foster environments where others thrive together. That's what leadership is. Influence. The influence you have on your team, the influence that the senior bears have over the junior bears is one of engagement, cooperation, so that everyone can be successful through that season. Well, so there you have it. There's 6 leadership lessons from the coastal brown bears of Katmai. You might find me totally insane, but as I'm standing there watching these bears, first of all, if you ever get the chance, go do it. We stayed in an awesome place in the Katmai National Park called Brooks Lodge. It's a lottery to get in. We've been in the lottery for 3 years. And when this came up, I just couldn't resist the opportunity to say yes when my wife asked me if I wanted to go. It was one of the most life-changing experiences, but part of it was observing these behaviors and seeing these 6 principles: respect boundaries, master patience and timing, adapt your strategy, manage your energy wisely, lead by example, foster cooperation, not conflict. Now, if I just read those 6 to you and had not told you how I had learned about them from the bears, you would say those are great leadership principles. And it's amazing to see that just happen naturally in wildlife and to be able to create that connection to say, well, this is something we can all learn from. And these animals certainly were trying to teach leadership, but nature just has a funny way of showing us that leadership principles are everywhere. So listen, if this episode resonated with you, share it with a fellow leader. If you ever get a chance to visit, I said, don't miss it. Reminder that sometimes the best leadership insights come from the quiet moments, just observing. So do lots of that as you're out in your daily travels. Shane will be back next week. I can't wait to get back with him. It's never as good as when it's just me, and I really appreciate having Shane to bounce ideas back and forward off of. But until then, keep leading with clarity, courage, curiosity. Keep the 4 F-bombs in your life. Thanks for listening. And as always, get lit. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Ignition Team podcast. Go to our website at www.leadership.Ignitionteam.com to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, engage with us, and find your favorite podcast networks, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.